Okay, welcome to Introduction to International Relations. I'll be reaching you all, the underlevel level students, with this mode of virtual class. I would like to advise that you listen to the lecture and the notes are meant to be read and understood via the explanations that comes with it. Let's proceed. Here we are to introduce international relations to you as a course, as a situation in the international system. We begin by looking at what international relation is. International relations as a course of study reflects the dynamics of international system. The system is complex with multiple but mutually functioning components and is characterized by interfacing changes and continuities which are instruments in the dynamic nature of the discipline. International relations as a discipline is broad and it encapsulates multivariate aspects of man in the global context. It can be described as a fusion of social science disciplines as it deals with basic elements of social man. The only difference is that it looks at such essentials in relational context beyond national borders. You see, what makes international relations all the more distinct is its broad scope. Men have been living in social clusters, family units, hamlets, clans, villages, towns, cities, communities, and nations. You see, there has always been a basis for social interaction as well as need to go beyond borders. This reinforces the thesis of the inevitability of mutuality or interdependence of men. So history is replete with interdependence of national groups who, having defined their boundaries, have found one another in an unavoidable situation of mutual interaction. Such economic factors as scarcity and want, social factors as friendship, enmity, intermarriages, expansion, land, hunger, political factors such as power, authority, influence, diplomacy, as well as military factors as coalition, alliance, and war, among other factors, have identified the context of international relations. These historical basics have also been responsible for the two fundamental and recurring elements of international politics, namely cooperation and conflict. This introduction is saying that international relations deals with cooperation among actors in the international system as well as conflicts among international actors in the world. So international relations deals with the situation of conflict and cooperation, the cause of conflict and cooperation, and the effect of conflict and cooperation in the international system on one side. On the other side, you look at the interdependence that exists among actors in the international system. Not just actors, you look at the situations in the international system connected with uh, man in the world. For instance, man is connected with natural disasters, man is connected with environmental degradation, all that man is facing, good and bad. Especially, let's talk about bad, have its roots somewhere. Pollution has its roots and it directly affects man's health. You also want to look at interaction among states in the international system. So, international relation encapsulates an interaction, transaction among actors who weighed in influence in the international system. Um, that is what you can look at in the international when it comes to introduction to international relations, and that will help you more to understand the current trend of the international system. But basically, you are looking at conflict and cooperation in the international system on one side and interdependence on another side. So let's look at the concept of international relations. A basic problem in the study of international relations is the understanding of definitional context. You see, there are three basic levels of understanding. These include IR as a course of study. You look at international relations as a course, as a field, as a discipline. Another part, you look at it as a situation, and that explains cooperation and conflict in the international system. And you also look at as a principle, as a law guiding actors in the international system. We are therefore going to look at conceptual clarification of international relations being a course of study, being a situation, and being a principle. As a course of study, international relations refer to our discipline, what we are currently studying in that specialized political science class in which we are learning the politics among nations. It is the field or body of knowledge that examines the totality of human relations across national boundaries. Goldstein, 2010, reminiscent of Carl, 1964, submit that international relations is the branch of political science that deals with interactions between states and non-state actors in the international system. Brown, in his book Understanding International Relations, 1995, notes that such relations transcend the political and governmental. Such non-state actors include intergovernmental organizations, international non-governmental organizations, non-governmental organizations, and transnational companies or multinational corporations, which are not necessarily political in nature. Hoffman defines international relations as the discipline concerned with the factors and the activities which affect the external policies and power of the basic unit into which the world is divided. Hoffman attempts to review international relations as a field that studies the foreign policies of states and factors determining the nature of such policies. The view is reinforced by Ola 1991, who argued that international relations are the study of all forms of interactions that exist between members of separate entities or nations within the international system. This perspective corroborates the earlier submission of international relations that international relations is an expansive field of knowledge. So international relations as a course of study has been studied for hundreds of thousands of years as part of the disciplines such as psychology, anthropology, sociology, economics, and of course history, political science. For instance, the likes of Thucydides, Sun Tzu, Niccolo Machiavelli, Thomas Hobbes, Clausewitz, who were espousing the principles of political realism in the context of use of power within and outside the state, were laying the foundation for popular and distinct school of thought today in international relations studies. International relations is a hybrid of other disciplines. It was not until after the Second World War that both attempts were made in the United States and Western Europe to carve a distinct course of study. The methodological approaches of such disciplines as political science, history, law, philosophy, sociology, within which international relations was subsumed, at that time did not allow for empirical, deeper, and easy comprehension of international affairs. Political studies was predominantly normative in approach, placing emphasis on institutions, structures, and government, as well as adopting the descriptive method to discuss norms and values in the system. History adopted the narrative approach when conservatively rather takes stock of only events but does not analyze them until they have matured after about 50 years. Sociology was equally descriptive in approach and paid little attention to the international social realities of the time. The methodology of all the disciplines in which Ara was taught encumbered adequate knowledge and understanding of empirical import of socio-political dilemmas between the two worlds, 1914 to 1945. The combination of paucity of statistics and data, just as normative prism denied professionals of those feats of predictive capacity. It was not until after the First World War that universities in the United States began to include scientific methodologies such as behavioral approaches that political science emerged to look at issues more critically, stressing the human rather than institutional actors. But this was not enough to make international relations a distinctive field. The positive contribution of University of Wales at Aberystwyth, the London School of Economics, and the Wright sisters also went a long way in the development and establishment of international relations as a distinct department or course of study. You see, it is pertinent to note that international relations has different names in different social templates and institutions of the world. These include international studies, international affairs, international politics, international diplomacy, to mention a few. The word international may be a common denominator, but in most cases, they are not technically the same. For instance, international studies encompasses international relations, another aspect of human society, such as the cultural, scientific, and economic areas, which may or may not be studied in relational or comparative context. International affairs goes beyond international relations. Like international studies, it may not be study of relational situation between states, but looks at international relations and other aspects of the world. International politics is just one of the subfields of international relations. International politics is only limited to the examination of political interactions among actors in the international system. You look at international diplomacy is the nearest in meaning and content, but its teaching sometimes excludes other non-political areas. The international relation field has subfields which are also regarded as areas of specialization. These include diplomacy, diplomatic history, foreign policy, international or international organization, international finance, international economics or international economic relations, international communications, strategic studies, war, conflicts, and peace studies. Now we have looked at international relations as a field or a course of study. So let's look at international relations as a situation. Then we'll proceed to looking at it as a principle, and we are going to end today's class. So, as a situation, international relations describe the state of interaction between two or more actors in separate national boundaries. Put differently, it describes the relations that take place by members of international communities. You see, this include all or any aspect of their relationships, such as war, conflict, dispute, separation, belligerency, settlement, pact, treaties, agreements, cooperation, conferences, organization. So, as a situation, you are looking at issues that unfolds among actors in the international system. Okay, now let's take a look at international relations as a principle. You see, relations refer to a set of ideas, concepts, notions that constitute the public policy that states makes for the purpose of the external context. It describes the foreign policy of a state, international organization, and or region, which are articulated, formulated, and implemented by international departments or a state department or ministry of foreign affairs. You see, the totality of such policy process is what is sometimes referred to as, for instance, the international relations of Nigeria or the international relations of Africa. Please pardon me. I just received a call from there. Let's proceed. I'm coming. So pardon me. This is just the last concept or the last thing to consider in this introduction of IRS 106, Introduction to International Relations. So we look at instance of the international relations of Nigeria, international relations of Africa, international relations of United Nations. In some cases, it's referred to as the international diplomacy of Africa. In some literature, preference is for international politics of Nigeria or a particular institution or state. So, in sum, we are looking at international relations in from the three angles: as a field of study, or as a discipline, as a course of study in tertiary institutions. We look at it as a situation, as issues among actors in the international system. Then we look at it as principles, as ideas that constitute the actions and interactions among actors in the international system, the nomenclatures given to those actions, to the situations that unfolds among actors in the international system. Now, I want to bring these three principles together. You see, international relations as a field of study studies international relations as a situation, examines international relations as a principle. Now, international relations as a situation is more enlightening by the study of international relations as a discipline in international system. Meaning that if you don't have a knowledge of international relations, you might not understand the situations that ensue among actors in the international system. Now you look at it as a principle. If without the knowledge of international relations, you may not understand the guiding principle, the set of ideas that determines the kind of interactions, the kind of interdependence, the kind of the kind of settlement and management of diplomacy between actors in the international system. So, with this introduction, I would like you to understand that international relations refer to study of conflicts and cooperation and interdependence among actors in the international system. Number two, you look at it as a situation, what is happening around the world. What is happening around the world now is that there was an outbreak of coronavirus from China, and it has moved to almost all the countries of the world. That is international relations as a situation. And then as a principle, you are looking at what guides interaction